during the trials, we find out it's late at night, Father's Day evening. Someone knocks at the door. My grandmother's in the back getting ready for bed wearing a nightgown. She's got one eye. He looks outside. It's Roger and Hodge. Ed, I ran out of gas. Can I come in and make a phone call? Well, sure. Come on in, Roger. He turns his back, and they put a gun to him.
Warning. The podcast you're about to listen to may contain graphic descriptions of violent assaults, murder, and adult language. Listener discretion is advised.
Murdered in their home. The brutal killing of Edwin and Bessie Morris. Part 3 of 3.
You know, they love it when they do get retrials or get to go out because that's a day out for them.
Sure.
Well, yeah, let's go there real quick before we dance away. You said 3 trials.
We've had three trials.
What if you can remember on so you have a trial, you get a conviction. What was reversed or sent back down for trial 2?
Sure. On the first one, they were convicted after 3 hours and 45 minutes of deliberation, and the judge went straight to the penalty phase. The Supreme Court said that there should have been a break in between.
Do what?
And that it was not fair because it happened. It was a little late, 6 o'clock at night or whatever when they found them. And so he said, no, we're going straight to it. And it actually went that day and the next day. But in their ruling at the time, they basically stated that it wasn't allowed in jury instructions because it didn't give them time to process what would have been the gravity of their verdict.
On the other side, they could have left that courtroom and talked about with their friends and their family and tainted the decision. See, that's where I don't agree with it. And I said, say what? Because in every one I had, we went right into sentence. So I'm like, what is that? Well, that's a judge. I'll just say probably an ineffective judge. There's a motivation there.
And in the other retrials, we went straight to sentence.
That's it.
So it was funny. It never got overturned in the others.
Yeah.
But in that one, that was the one thing that they used was that there was enough time for them to process the gravity of the verdict that they got.
Jeez, I just don't buy that. And there you go. Then the anguish it puts through the family and everything again. And then I can't imagine sitting down trial number 2 and it's like, okay, good. Let's do sentencing. And you're probably thinking, okay, what bus just drove past
me? We mean sentencing. We just don't want to do it.
We're here. Stop. It's like, geez, oh, Pete. So, oof, that sounds boneheaded to me.
Well, and people don't realize that, like, well, you're not paying for anything.
Oh.
Well, you do. I mean, we had the same attorneys. This time the trial was moved to Bowling Green. Mm-hmm. We were taken away from work, because we're going to be there every day of it. Your hotel stays, the stress of the family, food. You do have to help take care of some of the witnesses or the expenses that are happening in the Commonwealth and to get them to do it because you want to make sure, okay, that technicality's gone. Let's make sure there's nothing. So let's dig in a little bit further. What else can we find? Mm-hmm. And one of the things we talked about earlier too, testimonies, it's the same because you can use the script, but the judge may allow something this time that he didn't last time.
Yeah, I guess.
Or he may say, no, you can't use that. Even though it was used in the last trial, and you had those type of things come up, and then
it's just a bad trade-off.
It is
now. If it's a hard, real, agreeable technical foul, all of that I'm okay with.
That's right.
But in that case, so number one,
a technicality.
I think that's just a decision a judge made, and they don't always nail it right. So you get to number 2, you get that. How did you wind up with number 3 then? What went wrong with number 2?
So what was funny, it was, I think, one thing that they told us in the state of Kentucky at the time, 7 years is the quickest. If you convict somebody on a death row case, that's the quickest. That's all the appeals are supposed to take. Mm-hmm. So we're like, okay, not bad. Well, we made it about 4 years before it was overturned. Mm-hmm. It took another 2.5 years to do the retrial. So now we're in 95, 96. We start the retrial again.
And why did you end up with number 3? Do you remember why?
I'm trying to think. It was something was brought up about prior
convictions,
or something they had done. I think because it was brought up in the sentencing phase, that Epperson had been on the run from a conviction or an assault charge in Atlanta.
There's a certification process they use on prior bad acts, I think, and I can't remember the form. Maybe they jammed that up a little bit, but it's still, I mean, you can't use it during trial, right?
But use it during sentencing phase. You can bring up, because that shows you a prior history and what you're doing on it.
Well,
and it was interesting in the second trial. Bartley had testified the first time. Well, he shows up because he wanted out of at this time he was lodged in Boyle County, but he's still there. He's like, I'm not going to testify again. You can't make me. I just wanted out of the jail.
Mm-hmm.
So it was one of those like, okay, so now what do we do? And so you had a lot of objections. Well, we can't enter it because he won't testify. And it took a day for the judge to rule, no, we'll use the script. All right, who's going to read the script? Who gets to do this? And you can't redirect questions because it has to follow the exact questions that are there. Well, the defense in this one was like, we're not going to ask the same questions. We want some different answers. So it was a whole process of, again, you think you know a lot about life, how things can be turned, or one statement can mean one thing one time, but you don't know how they'll take it the second time.
Sure.
One thing that came up in the first trial that I thought was interesting, we talked about how they treated us like criminals for the most part. There was a break taking place, and me and my cousin and I can't remember one other person had walked outside to get a drink or something. And as we came back in, Bartley was standing right in front of me, getting ready to go into the courthouse. Well, I'm a young kid, and my cousin he was a year older than me. We thought, guess what? This is our shot. Let's get him. And we couldn't get close to him by the time they got us. But going forward from then, we were basically strip searched or went through metal detectors everywhere we went because we got that close to him. Because at the time you think, yeah, I'd love to get to him, but you never know what happened. So in the second trial, it was even worse because they knew we were angry. They had already had a retrial in the Akron and convicted again. But we were worried about, okay, we got to get them for ours because ours was more of a locked case. We want to make sure they were put to death for our grandparents and for Dr. Acker. Dr. Acker was there during the trial on both cases, some of his family, and we were there for his. So the second trial, when it happened, it was a little bit faster. And I remember Hodge was still I'm going to blow this kiss. I'm going to do this. Come do something, big boy. Or, y'all come do something to me. You're scared. Just sit there and be good. And he'd laugh and smile at different comments. And my dad and his brothers and sister, they're like, don't make a scene. Because you're so afraid that if you do something, it'll cause a mistrial.
Yeah,
or you're scared to death that if, the first trial, I did my best to get to him 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
My cousin tried to get to him because you're going to keep blowing stuff.
Well, at least in the least you wouldn't be allowed in the courtroom to see it.
Yeah, and they're like, you got to be good. We can't have anything mess up. We've already done one trial. We're not going to go through this again. So you're on pins and needles. The jury, you try to read them when they come in. You try to see what, are they looking at us? Are they not looking at us? You spend more time watching them watch the people on the stand to see how they're reacting. And, or they'll say something that is not true and you want to be like, bullshit, or no, it didn't happen, and you can't do anything.
Yeah.
So it was, a big learning experience trying to figure that part of it out.
Yeah. Because a lot of times judges will, before they'll read anything, they'll look and they'll tell everybody, they'll say, I know this is an emotional thing, but I have to caution you that any outburst, anything you say, it'll be a problem.
And for the grandkids, and even I think my Uncle Bobby had seen pictures maybe of it, but I don't think my aunt and my other Uncle Ronnie had. During the trial, the pictures are out there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's put up on a big screen for you to see. And I remember in the first and the second trial, they're like, y'all can't see it. You got to walk out. So the grandkid, the parents would tell us we'd have to, and you're nosy. You want to, you want to see out of, I guess curiosity. You don't want to see your grandparents that way, but you're like, I want to know. I want to be able to see what was there.
Yeah, I think it helps to grasp it.
Yeah, in your mind, you have in your mind what it is. And then like with that, he's like, son, you'll never get it graphic enough to be
what it was.
What it really was when you see it. But then you're like, I want to see it, but then you're like, I don't. Because
it's part of that why. It's like theoretically that we believe that the dots will connect a little bit better. In the end, it doesn't change a lot. You know, in the end, it can really leave some marks on you that are pretty difficult.
You know, and then you find out. Like I said, my grandfather had several heart attacks and strokes. Walked with a cane. During the trials, we find out it's late at night, Father's Day evening. Someone knocks at the door. My grandmother's in the back getting ready for bed, wearing a nightgown. She's got one eye. He looks outside. It's Roger and Hodge. Ed, I ran out of gas. Can I come in and make a phone call? Well, sure. Come on in, Roger. He turns his back, and they put a gun to him. And at the top of the refrigerator, when you walked into the kitchen, the refrigerator is right there. There was a pistol up there. Well, as soon as my grandfather or Papa walked through the kitchen, he went to grab the pistol because he was going to fight. Well, that's when they started beating him. Mm-hmm. And then tied him up. Well, my grandmother could hear all hell breaking loose. Here's the shots, comes running in. And she's like, I'll give you anything. If you give us anything, we'll let you all live. Well, they'd already killed Papa. And she told him where everything was, took her to the back, and then, you know, did her the way they did and killed her. And then you're like, you keep hearing that over and over. And then we're talking about, you know, 60 is not old, but 68, 65-year-old heart attack, stroke, walking with a cane, cancer survivors.
To make it that far.
Yeah. And
it's just this week, just locally, and I know we're dating this a little bit, but that 74-year-old man at the lake that stumbled.
Just stumbled and fell and
to make it to 74 and slipped probably on a piece of loose rock and die. So, it's like when you look at the struggles people have in your life, it makes it that much more selfish.
Yeah, because, you think in the 70s and 80s, if you had a heart attack or a stroke, usually didn't make it. They didn't have the advances they do today. So for him to survive so many of them, we always thought he was Superman. And, you know, she woke up with a dot in her eye one morning. It's like, we're going to the doctor and see you. And they're like, yeah, we're taking your eye.
Yeah.
You know, within a week later, she's without an eye. So, and then you get,
just to have that happen.
Because you open the door to what you think's a friend in need. You know, you get your life taken from you.
Gesture to them, and
that it happens to you.
And you know, it often makes you wonder, and I'm sure you all have, why did you just not rob them and leave? Just like with the doctor and his daughter, just rob and leave. Why do you have to do that to them?
It's funny. It came up during some of the interviews. They knew that Papa would know Roger. And the reason that they were killed is because they couldn't leave a witness behind to know who they were. If they would have done the Ackers and not done the grandparents, he wouldn't have known them from Adam.
That's it.
So they would have, you know, if they'd have killed him, we wouldn't have known. But because they went to someone they knew, and again, they started getting brazier. Yeah. First, they'd robbed a little drug dealer and got some drugs and some money, and then they'd done this. Oh, I got a bigger hit. Let's go do this one.
That's it.
And it was always going to be not enough.
The next one's going to be it's that rush or adrenaline that they get into.
Can you imagine how they reacted when they found out the doctor didn't die?
Oh, I would have loved
to have seen the looks on their faces.
They probably shed a peach seed. I mean, that probably blew their minds. That's another thing too, is that when people debate whether you should protect your home, you know, Kentucky's big on that castle doctrine. Is what the argument you'll hear is, well, people just want to come in and take things. Well, I've always said that anytime somebody crosses the threshold of your door or through a window,
you better believe it.
You need to be ready. And I know some people will hear that and they'll go nuts, but the reality of it is, it's never just really a theft. And if somebody's home, that's why the punishment for that kind of burglary
is more,
and home invasion is that high.
That's exactly
is the likelihood of injury or death on your part because of the fact that those people don't care. And if they happen to find you there or if they target you, you're in big trouble. That never works good.
Well, it's like this isn't about politics. Isn't whether
it's not
one side or the other. It's about protecting what's yours, what's your right.
Your life
and your family.
That's
it. You know, if someone came in and they were going to hurt her, you're going to do anything you can to stop them.
Yeah, that's a.
And when people are like, "Well, I just let them have everything," my grandparents did.
That's it.
They gave them everything.
Well,
you know, Dr. Ecker and Tammy. They gave them everything they had, and it wasn't enough.
That thing that they told your grandmother, I've always called it the last lie you'll hear, is that thing, is that how many victims were told, go along with the program and you won't get hurt.
Worry about it.
And they're dead.
Yeah.
And so,
it's just like we mentioned Tommy Lynn Sells that had basically told on himself. He told the 13-year-old little girl,
Haley that.
If you just come with me and let me do this, I'll let you go.
I won't hurt you.
And he did, and he killed her.
Yeah.
And
it happens over. So I know people have different opinions about it, but I think now we're talking about that gross reality of what the risk is and what people are like to do that. So you get trial 3, verdict again, the guilty, and what were the verdicts on the 3 on trial 3? Because that's
so we basically Epperson and Hodge received the death penalty again. That was in 2003. By that time, my father had passed away, so he never got to see final justice, even for them being. They were still on death row the entire time, so they never got removed from death row. But he never got the satisfaction of knowing, okay, this is it. They're done. And again, right during the deliberate, this time it only took about an hour and 45 minutes. And they're like, what? They told us that Epperson was dying. Mm-hmm. He had kidney failure, and he was going to be dead in a year. So let's not put the death penalty. That's what they tried to tell us during the deliberation. We're like, I hope your kidneys blow up, and when you're in the chair. At that time, he still had the chair around. Nothing. So we got the death penalty again. So then the whole process starts all over again. So you think about it in 2003, that's 28 years that we have been, or 2000 been 18 years that we've been waiting, and now we're 21, 22 years this year.
And they've still not been
executed. We know that Hodge is way up on the list. There's only three that's been on death row longer than they have now.
Yeah.
In the Acker case, since Dr. Acker passed away, they actually there was going to be a retrial, and they decided just to give him life in prison. The family just said there was no more.
That's a thing that you'll catch every now and then, especially like if you get another appeal or whatever, is life without. And again, I think one thing the defense attorneys do that I'd probably do is if you have somebody that just got the death penalty, the next fight is the death penalty, and we're going to talk about that for a minute. I mean, the fight changes, your strategy changes. You're not in a hurry. Because you're not leaving
forever.
Yeah, you got until you breathe your last breath or whatever. While we're talking, I can't remember the last person in Kentucky that was put to death.
Because when the first one happened, I actually went and was on one of the major news networks because you had all these people going against it.
Yeah.
And at the time, I'd figured up it cost almost $1 million to keep a death row inmate alive. And I'm like, this million could have saved this many people.
Yes.
So if you don't do it for any other reason, let's do it to, help control this. If all these cases or these souls are so important to you. And then, of course, now there's the memorandum, or I don't know the right word, but there's a pause on the death penalty.
The last one was a guy named Chapman in 2008.
That's it. Yeah. Ralph Chapman, I think it's Ralph.
Yeah.
How long did he sit there?
I don't know. And the couple, I think I remember looking the other day that the last couple wanted the death penalty, and they didn't want to be defended, kind of like a Gary, who was like, remember, I'm Gary Fry Me?
Yeah.
Gary, years ago, I had that T-shirt. That they
Timothy
wanted.
McVeigh.
Yeah, exactly.
He did, and what's crazy about it, I wish they would allow more to do that.
Yeah.
But, he said, I don't want to spend a lot of time in prison, drop all my appeals. And even in Oklahoma, and I think there was one in Texas, they tried to do the same thing for a murder case, and the judge wouldn't let them. They're like, no, you have to go through the appeal. We're not going to let you drop the appeal part of it. So it's weird how that works. That
Well, I get the idea that everybody has to have a virulent defense, and that we have to protect it. Again, when we talk about defense attorneys, I don't throw shade on them because that's what this game. It's hard to watch if you're on your side. But that's what separates this country from other countries
and there are mistakes made. I mean, to me, I wish, and I've talked to Attorney General Coleman about it. Make a 7 or a 10 year, whatever that time frame is going to be, because if you process it, there's enough stuff you can do in a decade.
There we go. That rubs. Remember, I told you, and I think we agree that if you're not in a hurry, though, then that gets a little shady because when time passes, witnesses change their mind.
They do.
Or they die. Or
they don't remember
found.
as well. You know,
That's
9 years. You think we went 18 years, and yet people had to get up and testify again. They're like, well, in 87, you said this.
Oh, yeah.
And you said this word instead of that word. And
yeah.
You're like, well, that was 20 years ago. You know,
exactly.
How am I supposed to?
Well, what happened in Kentucky is that, so Chapman was the last one in 2008. In 2010, a Franklin Circuit judge
stopped it.
Judge, his name was Judge Philip Shepard, put a stay. And what it was, there was a guy up for execution named Gregory Wilson, and it was his turn, and there was an appeal, and he did it. And the stay was based on Kentucky had moved away from the chair, Old Smoky, and which actually probably looked better in Eddyville. I mean, Eddyville's a scary ass place. That place is weird looking. So they kind of went after the protocol, and we won't go to the whole rabbit hole of the death penalty and how it's attacked, but the lethal injection protocol is where a lot of people go. Mm-hmm. I remember that like two of the big things that he argued in that why he got that stay was some kind the belief that there was a complication between regulations and the statute, that the state had mandated a 3-drug lethal injection, a cocktail, I guess. But the statute, the state thing allowed for a single drug or a combination of drugs. And so there's a discrepancy, but I'm like, I think 3 is a combination of. Are we playing words? I mean,
exactly. It's basically semantics.
Yeah.
Are you trying to just use this one? Yeah. And it seems like it would be as simple, because I've done this through the last 4 attorney generals we've had. Let's rewrite it. If that's the thing, then let's pass this and get it rewritten to stop. And that's what they're working on.
Because in other places, they've still called it cruel and inhumane because people didn't die as fast as they did. Or like in one of them I read years ago where somebody snored. Mm-hmm. And they were like, well.
Yeah, that means they're alive, and that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, I snore, and my life is at risk because Wendy doesn't wake. She does. I've got bruises. It's not like, would you stop, honey?
And you wake up sore and don't know what you think.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So, but, that was one of the things there, too, is that is on that. The second thing is that he argued a lack of safeguards for people mentally ill or disabled or insane inmates. And there goes the mental health argument, which has always been on the table anyway. For example, I don't know what it is, but what the IQ number is, but it gets in a fight over one number. But it and that's where maybe some BS starts. But I don't think anybody in their right mind wants to put somebody to death that is in a state of mind like that. That said, if we all agreed that they were insane or had that kind of problem, we probably wouldn't take them. That we wouldn't take them to that level.
I'm talking about it from the victim's family, but if you're on the jury, mm-hmm. Some people, man, I'm putting somebody to death. What does that make me? And so you try to take into that consideration, because that's a big thing for them, because they've got all the eyes of everybody. Both families, mm-hmm. the victims and the defendants. Well, you're going to kill my son, or you're not going to kill the people that killed my grandparents. So, there's a lot to that. So
it's a heavy weight.
It is
very heavy.
The IQ part of it, it's always been interesting because, and you are a lot more in depth as far as your background, but that can be manipulated too.
Oh, God,
some of them know if they're within that,
little
margin
bit
of error,
yes.
a little bit. There's a way to. So I always said a number doesn't do it. The talking. The interactions, watching a person over a time frame, you'll know mm-hmm. if they're mentally capable or not mentally capable.
Well, that's like, what state is it that they just are getting ready to release a guy that killed somebody and ate his brains, and he was ruled insane and went into a facility, and he's coming out because they've rehabilitated him. That's it.
Yeah,
that's it. And I'm like, okay, a couple of things either happened there. Either he faked really good, he feigned, and they didn't get it, or whoever's at the facility is full of shit. It really, and
because you can't. There's not too extreme. That's too far an extreme.
Yeah, because it reminds me of, who was it? Richard Kemper, the big tall serial killer. Same thing. He was a poster child for rehabilitation mentally, where they were bragging and writing papers about how well he did. Mm-hmm. He was a freaking mastermind,
because he knew,
and he killed a lot of people. Yeah. So I just don't buy that. So back. So we've had that on hold since 2010. People could debate that. I just wonder sometimes, was this a judge's opportunity who's against the death penalty to throw the yellow flag, or are these real? And it'll take court cases to find that out. Because again, what goes on, if your state has a lethal injection, there's a lot of pressure put from the anti-death penalty people toward the pharmaceutical companies that make it.
Right. Because then they said they won't sell it to the states that do the death penalty.
Yeah. So there's a lot, and that's how you fight that. My solution is you go to the evidence room and you get some of that carfentanil that probably killed my youngest brother back in 2020 and kills a lot of people. Go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
We don't. I'm not going to go political here, but we're not really beating on that as hard as we can anyway. There's drugs out there that people are dying of from every day accidentally ingesting them.
Yeah, I mean,
let's just use those and call it even. I mean, that's just I'm pretty opinionated in that part of it. The only people I don't debate on that with the death penalty is if they have a strong true religious thing, then I dig that. But all these other things about whether it's a deterrent or it's not justice or it's cruel, they haven't met you. And they haven't met people who have been in your shoes.
And that's the thing. Some of them are like, well, I feel the same way. There's no way you can know how you would feel. And people's been through a whole lot worse stuff than I have. Mm-hmm. But until that actually happens, you try to have sympathy for them and feel it, but you don't know. Mm-hmm. You know, and to explain the bond that's there, because families today sometimes aren't as close as they were then or as they are now.
Well, and there's the idea of putting it behind you, because a lot of people will, and I don't blame a fault for this, is if you're fighting it and you're going along with it and they come to you with life without, then that stops it.
I understand why they did it, but I'll give you an example. Like my son, to no fault of his, we've never celebrated. He never got to give me a Father's Day card.
Yeah.
We've never done anything for Father's Day.
Yeah.
And he's been very understanding about it. But now if him and his wife, if they have a child, I'm like, you please do it.
Yeah.
I don't want you,
but
I want you to understand why we don't. Yeah. It's not that I don't want to be your dad. I'm not proud of being your dad, but that's just not a day we, in our mind or in my mind, and I think the whole family's, it's just not a day we want to be happy about.
It's a giant wound.
It is, and it's not fair to the wives, the spouses, the kids, the grandkids that come generate, because it wasn't them, but it shows you murder or these type of events don't affect just that. It's generational. Mm-hmm. It goes on and on, because I'm sure most of my views might have been different if that hadn't happened at 16.
Sure.
Or going through 3 trials and seeing what happened, and then how the news can try to manipulate it. We've tried to keep it at least somewhat up front. Some of the local news stations, they've done stories periodically, or they'll come back up for a trial, or when the ACCR decided to go, to make it their thing. 2 years ago, local station, because they talked about doing away with the death penalty. Mm-hmm. And they wanted our opinion and what we thought about it. And a bunch of us got together to like, no, we want this done. It's not about, we respect other people that believe differently, but for our family and for the victims of the people that we know and those that we don't know that's had this happen to them, we feel like that's the only way I know I'll get total closure.
Yeah.
Is that I see them take their last breath, whether it be, I want it to be by death penalty. The good Lord may take them home beforehand, but
I don't think he'll be taking them.
No, and I agree. But and that brings up a whole.
They have a contract,
and we
with
won't get
somebody
into
else.
that. But that brings up a whole another thing. The Bible says that there is no greater sin. A sin's a sin.
Right.
My telling a lie or doing something deceitful, whether I mean to or not, can be the same.
Right.
So they all claim they got religion.
They always get it when they get in
it's amazing when you need him the most. That's when you. But do I want him? I don't want to see him in heaven. I can't. I hope they burn from the day. But at the same time, that's why I'm not God, and He's greater than us, because in their mind they may get forgiven, and that'll be one of the hardest things for. Probably in religion, that's one of the hardest things I have, is knowing that they have the same right that I do. But I think it's different, because I don't think their mindset works that way.
Yeah.
I think they're pure evil.
Because saying I'm sorry has to be heartfelt, I guess.
Well, then it makes you reflect back to the trial where they're blowing kisses and saying,
laughing,
"Come on, that's not
to
remorse.
Come do this. Exactly,
that's
right.
not. You've had an epiphany and you thought, what have I done? I'm so sorry I did this to your family."
Yeah.
It's not that.
And that's the conundrum of faith, is that if, without going super religious on everybody, is that if we believe in forgiveness, you almost have to say, but being in the middle of it is hard. And I was going to ask you, I think I know the answer. Is there a part of you that has considered personally forgiving them?
Never.
Yeah,
I would love to go sit and talk to Epperson.
Yeah, that's what I was asked too. Is
Hodge? I want to see. I don't want to talk to him.
I don't want to do.
And what's funny, because you try to be an adult, you try to be respectful, but if the day comes that they're going to inject him or whatever, I'm going to do the exact same thing he did at me. I'm going to blow him kisses. I'm going to smile and just. I say that, but then when the verdict was read and they were found guilty, and we all broke down crying, like we were heartbroken. With Epperson, I'd love just why you could have got, if you told him you needed $20,000, he'd have gave it to you. Yeah. Why'd you have to? Yeah. I would never give him that satisfaction. Yeah. To do it, but I'd really. There's sometimes it really gets me, where I'm like, I really want to know. But then there's other times I'm like, I hope because they've told us he's had cancer. When you have you're a victim, there is a Defender online lookup. There's a number. Yeah. And they will give you any updates that go on. And a couple of years ago, I got a phone call that they had moved Hodge to another facility for the hospital. And I called the warden. And I'm like, hey, I would love to come visit your thing. Can I get in to visit? And he said, well, sure, we can set this up. What's your name? And do you know anybody here? And I'm like, no, I don't really know anything. And he's like, wait a second, Morris, we just got someone. And he said, good try. And he said, I'll give you an A for effort. And I'm like, can you tell me why, what's going on? And I had a couple friends in the meeting. I'm like, do me a favor, try to see if you can figure out what's going on. And you never could. But, they've told us that they're 23 hours in isolation and all this. But if you think about the death row, it's almost quadrupled. Yeah. Since they were put in there for our murders. And now you got all these other people that are going through the same thing, waiting. Exactly. And until we start doing something, I truly, and we won't get into the politics, I believe it's a deterrent. Mm-hmm. If you actually start, in Florida and in Texas, Oklahoma, where they're starting to do more executions, where they have them, you don't see as many brutal, or they will solve quick. Mm-hmm. Here, I was working at 16. I've worked my entire life, and my money goes to keep the people that murdered my grandparents alive, fed, clothed, medical, a bed to lay in, food. I feed them 3 meals a day, and that's that part.
And an education if they want.
Yeah, they can, they get everything they want. Yes. They have whatever they want, any needs, and yet you got people out here that can't get the medicine they need because it's too expensive. Right. So I'm always like, there's a lot of things people don't think about, that these type of actions, what it does to you overall. Do I want to pay taxes? No, I sure don't want to pay to know that I'm helping them. Yeah. We all got to pay it, but that's where part of that money goes. And,
for sure.
When if the people that say, well, let's let them loose, all right, here, give me some of your money every month. Mm-hmm. And then that's what we're going to use. And they change their opinion real fast once they start thinking about that part of it.
It's a conundrum for a lot of people. It's a conundrum. If your grandparents could see everything that's happened from that day to today, what would they say? Knowing who they were, what do you think?
I think they would be extremely proud of the one thing we've always said, and you're a Morris. Mm-hmm. You need to be. You may not be the best looking, but you give it all you got. Mm-hmm. And all of the family, from the daughter, the sons, the grandchildren, the great grandchildren, from that, we've all imprinted that in ourselves. And I think if they looked at it overall, they could sit up top, and when they look down from above, it's like they did it. Yeah. That's my people. That's my. Because we bring it up all the time. We'll have reunions, and we're like, we hope we made you proud. That's still a goal of mine every day.
What a legacy.
Yeah, I mean, if you look on our motto is to give freely, to love, carelessly, to make sure everyone has a good time. Because it doesn't matter what we have individually. It doesn't matter what goals we achieve. If you're the only one who achieves them, what good did it do? Mm-hmm.
Sure.
If you can't help other people and let them reach, that's why I love the marina. Not to get on it, but because we get to see everybody else have a good time.
Yeah.
They get to enjoy a little, we call it our oasis.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that would be their one thing. If they looked at everybody, because we've all done so many different things, they could just say, you did the Morris name proud.
What a legacy. What a way to show strength in the face of something that horrible. That's probably what I would imagine. That's what they would say too. Thank you.
Thank you all.
No, thank you, because I know this pulls back a scab. Although you're as long as this goes on, I just feel bad that you're living this open wound, and so many other people are living that open wound. And I would have to agree that they would be proud because they've watched you all struggle with everything.
Well, we greatly appreciate you all doing this, not just for ours, but for the fresh cases. And then I know you've changed a little bit this year, going back looking at some of the other cases,
right?
Because it needs to be in people's minds.
It does.
A lot of times we get wrapped up in this social media 2-minute world.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that happened. Oh, that's awful. Oh, that happened. Oh, I hate that. And these things are real. They don't just happen and snap and something else. The video game world is not real world.
That's it.
And for you all doing this podcast and keeping people informed and helping victims and helping the police and just helping the general public understand all different aspects. I mean, with your backgrounds and what you're doing is a great service for a lot of people.
Thank you, because a lot of what we do that we recognized is on some of the older cases, if you Google the victim's name, you might get a copy of an appellate record from the person that killed him. And years ago, that struck me as like, that's just not fair. So when people come back now, and if they Google your grandparents' name or they Google your name, they're going to hear who they were.
Yeah.
It's just not a name and a story from
That's
1985.
It's not an old picture. The old pictures.
Yes, it's a surviving grandson telling what it was like to hear that first phone call.
Yeah.
And what it's like 40 years later.
Amen. And that's so. Yeah, we do enjoy doing that. Is giving a platform for that to where people are memorialized. I think in a better way than just old news articles. Because again, even with the media, they'll cover the things they need to cover to get things done, but they can't go in and won't go into that kind of depth.
Well, they do the snippet, and then hopefully also, if anyone else is going through this, it gives them a perspective of what. It's not an overnight. Don't think that once they're arrested that, it's going to be 2 months or 3 months. This is a long process. It don't end in a 48-minute TV episode or in a, it's something that goes on, but you have to be patient and diligent to make sure your family knows that. Because like you said, in death, a lot of times families tear each other apart. And when you go through tragedy, just a normal death's bad enough. When you go through tragedy, it can be so much more. And this is just a way to let people know, hang in there, it gets there. It's a long process, and we may not know the end, but each step, it's there. And there's people like you all and others out there that help keep that going. That way they know what to expect, because nothing's worse than the unexpected.
That's
right.
I just met 2 weeks ago with a family we worked with before that are coming on a 10-year anniversary date where their adult son's been missing, presumed dead.
And that's one thing we've always said, at least we know.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. You all did John Bonet.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm like, how do they not know? I mean, if the dad, we all have theories about who did and who didn't, but not knowing.
And
it all is awful. And there's so many of them out there that way.
Aside of John Bonet, I think what we've done on some of our missings that we've started doing is the truly not knowing where your son is.
Yeah, right. I can't imagine.
And you don't know if he's in a field, been tossed in a river.
Is he getting, sex traded somewhere? Or
they can't even bury them, and they know, or they know they're dead.
They buy the marker and the tombstone.
And to put it all up,
and it's there. And what a sad reason.
It's just...
But I think you're expressing that thing of maintaining hope when it feels impossible. That hearing from somebody is important, because it's hard to get across to people that time hurts, but in an investigation, time can actually be your friend. It really
is, and it's
that's hard, but it's there.
You say keep living, but you do, and we can think of things that would have never happened that were good if that hadn't happened.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you grow up in a county with one stoplight, and there's not a whole lot there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the people that are there are great, but opportunities I got because we moved from there. And we never would have moved if it hadn't been for my grandparents.
Oh, there we go.
You know, we talked about they never got to be apart. They never spent a night apart. The only time they were apart was when we drove them from the cemetery to the graveyard. But we're so thankful they went together.
Yeah.
Because I can't imagine one of them having to live without the other.
Yeah.
So there's no matter how bad something is, there are some things you can find that
a little
give you a little bit of comfort. Yeah,
lining.
you got to find the good part of it.
And due to faith, the repose of their soul.
That's exactly
at the
right.
hand of God. I
Most
mean,
definitely.
There's the power of faith right there. So they're okay.
They're good.
They're okay.
Yeah, they were within seconds. They were good.
Yeah, there's that. Well, thanks again, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you
so
all so much. We
Mark.
really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks. The Murder Police podcast is hosted by Wendy and David Lyons and was created to honor the lives of crime victims, so their names are never forgotten. It is produced, recorded, and edited by David Lyons. The Murder Police podcast can be found on your favorite Apple or Android podcast platform, as well as at murderpolicepodcast.com, where you will find show notes, transcripts, information about our presenters, and a link to the official Murder Police podcast merch store, where you can purchase a huge variety of Murder Police podcast swag. We are also on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, which is closed caption for those that are hearing impaired. Just search for the Murder Police podcast and you will find us. If you have enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe for more and give us 5 stars and a written review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you download your podcasts. Make sure you set your player to automatically download new episodes so you get the new ones as soon as they drop. And please tell your friends. Lock it down, Judy.